Welcome to the first video on Paganini technique from the beginning. I've made a short introduction video explaining this method, and if you haven't already done so, I suggest you watch it because it gives you an overview of what we will be doing and why. Now we will be starting with left-hand pizzicato. Ruggiero Ricci described left-hand pizzicato as being probably the best exercise for developing the left hand. It strengthens the fingers, it develops their independence, and because the third and fourth finger are used most often, you are developing the weak part of the hand. In the beginning, we will be working at left-hand pizzicato, not using the bow. The point of this is so that you can concentrate on your left hand 100%. Very important, particularly if you've never done this before, is not to practice it for any longer than about 1 or 2 minutes at first, because your fingers will get blisters otherwise. So start with a few minutes, and over a couple of weeks and months you can step it up to about 4 or 5. 5 minutes actually really being enough. The most important thing is to practice this regularly. Practice left-hand pizzicato a few minutes every time you practice. It's great for warming up and it's great for developing the hand. We're going to start with the fingers of your left hand plucking the open E string. Bring your hand into first position. Bring your fingers above the strings slightly so that you can actually pluck them, and your thumb more or less opposite of your second finger. The thumb position is pretty individual because it has a lot to do with the shape of your hand. So your thumb can be opposite the second finger, it can be slightly towards the first finger or slightly towards the third finger. Let your thumb find its own position which is comfortable. Bring your elbow around to the right a little bit so that you bring your fingers over the string, and start plucking the open E string 4 times with the fourth finger. Then you do the same with the third, and with the second, and with the first. You will notice that the fourth finger, it's the weakest finger, but it actually has the best angle for plucking, whereas the first finger, which is one of the stronger fingers, has an angle which is not so good. So let your finger find the possibility and find its way of plucking the string. You can't really go wrong on this. The whole point is that this is basically teaching your fingers the correct position. So start off with exactly that. Pluck the E string 4 times with each finger. Then you do the same thing on the A string. You move your elbow over to the right a little bit more to bring your fingers over the A string, and you do the same thing, each finger plucking it 4 times. Then release your elbow to the left from time to time so that you basically have this motion going, because if you keep it over here for too long, that will be strenuous. So release it in this direction regularly. Then you do the same thing with the D string. You will have to bring your hand over the D string, so if your fingers are above the D string, that brings your elbow over to the right a little more, and you do the same thing. You release. You can release in between. Basically, the more often you release to the left, the better. And then you do the same thing on the G string. Bring the elbow over to the right, bring your fingers above the G string, and you pluck the G string with each finger 4 times again. Then you do the same thing, plucking each string only twice with each finger. That will be like this. Remember to release. The speed that you do this is not important. You can do it very slowly. Or you can do it faster. Important is that it is even. Do not try to pluck the strings as loud as possible, but concentrate on the evenness. It doesn't have to be loud in the beginning. It will get louder with time. Now the last thing you do is you pluck each string with each finger only once. That will be fourth finger, third finger, second finger, first finger. Then you do the same on the A string, D string, now when you're working at this, the most important thing to watch out for is the evenness, which is probably also what you will find most difficult in the beginning, because each finger has its own angle to the string, and like I already mentioned, the fourth finger's angle is near perfect for plucking, and the first finger's angle is not ideal for plucking. So it will take a bit of time to get the first finger to be able to really pluck well. So take your time over this, concentrate on the evenness. The speed is not important. You can speed it up slightly if you start off very slowly, and when you feel comfortable with it and you notice that your fingers are sounding very similar, that you can not tell much of a difference between the first finger plucking or the fourth finger plucking, for example, then you can move on to the next video, which will be about putting fingers onto the string for other fingers to pluck.